Hey everyone, Seth Campbell here with the new Segue Says podcast. This might just be the moodiest pairing of songs that we have ever done. In this episode, the two songs are Wicked Game by Isaak and Fields of Gold by Sting. Now these songs, similar tempos, similar grooves, same key of B minor. A lot of commonalities to work with. As always, let's take a brief look at each song before we get into how the segue is going to work. So, Wicked Game, I'm sure everyone knows it, moody song from the early mid-90s. Was used in just about every TV show in that era. The entire song is three chords. B minor, A, E. And it has that very distinctive lead soft guitar. That sort of bendy twang to it. Which unfortunately is not something you can really replicate on a piano. It has very, Isaac's sort of deep, sultry vocals. The world was on fire, but no one could save me but you. Sort of latter-day Elvis-like. Strange what desire makes some people do. I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you. Somebody like you. And the chorus, no, I wanna fall in love. No, I wanna fall in love with you. Might be one of the most famous falsetto vocal breaks in pop music. Just flips from one register to the other. So, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, Fields of Gold. One of the bigger hits of Sting's solo career, in fact, one of his most popular sort of greatest hits compilation is called Fields of Gold. There weren't many hits to come out of the album 10 Summoner's Tales, which is a shame because it's a great, great album. It's among my favorite of Sting Solo's albums, for sure. There's a lot of lesser-known obscure songs in there, including songs like It's Probably Me, which I believe we talked about in this podcast already. But Fields of Gold is definitely the most known song from that. It also, 7 Days and Shape of My Heart got some notoriety as well, but Fields of Gold is definitely the song from that album that has exhibited the most staying power. Now it's also B minor in this same kind of tempo, but the chords are a lot more diatonic to B minor and its relative major D major, because that's where the song actually ends, is in the relative major, as opposed to this E major in Wicked Game is kind of the chord with the most character. It's the 4 major. Whereas as soon as you go to the second chord of Fields of Gold, which is a G, it sets up that you're using a different minor scale. You're using the regular or Aeolian minor for the musically learned. as opposed to the melodic minor, which has this G sharp in it, which is where the E chord in Wicked Game comes in. Again, if you've studied music theory, you know what I'm talking about. But to keep it simple, essentially, those chords are what makes the difference between these two songs, and why we have to be a little delicate about just hopping from one to the other, because the two characters are very different. Anyway, Fields of Gold is essentially a verse-refrain song.
You'll remember me when the west wind moves upon the fields of barley. You can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of
And like I said, both these songs are really moody. Wicked Game it's pretty ambiguous. It's hard to tell. I think the moodiness comes a little bit more from the presentation of the song than the actual meaning of the words. It's sort of like it's a love song, but it's a reproachful love song. It's like, how cruel of you to make me fall in love with you, which, you can question the morality of that viewpoint on its own. But whereas Fields of Gold is much more of the moodiness. I mean, some of it comes from the music, but a lot of it comes from the lyrics. And there's some of just the most beautiful melancholy lyrics. And Sting has written that he was inspired by it quite simply by looking out over the window and seeing a sunset over the barley fields, and just, the stark gold of all the barley waving in the wind. And he said it just struck him as so beautiful and romantic, but also kind of sad. And so this is a song, the lyrics kind of tell the story of, young lovers running free together through the fields, and then, by the end of it, see the children.
see the children run as the sun goes down among the fields of gold.
So, it's progressed to the children, and, the very last verse is sort of a repeat, just,
you'll remember me when the west wind moves.
which to me is kind of almost implied like that the singer, someday will, once the singer dies, the love that he's singing to can hold on to his memory by going back and looking at those same fields in the sunset. I don't know if that's what he intended, but that's how it always came across to me. So, you're kind of on the journey with this couple through time, and that imagery of the sunset in the barley field is what stays the same and holds the whole thread together. And I think that's just so lovely. This song can still make me cry, and I've known it for over a decade. I performed it for over a decade, is what I mean. So this is definitely, you want to be careful where in the set list you put this, because if you've done too many moody songs already, you should probably mix it up with something a little more upbeat first. But now, I prefer starting with Wicked Game, just to me, because Fields of Gold has so much, again, because of the imagery and the meaning of the lyrics, to me has so much more of an impact. Maybe that's just me, but so I like to let Fields of Gold be the last word. So I like to start with Wicked Game. Not that I don't love Wicked Game, because I do, but just in terms of which mood you want to leave people with. Now, this is where we get to one bit that I'm a little bit reluctant to do, because I've talked about this before with segues, and I've said, to me personally, when you're creating a segue, what differentiates a segue from, say, a medley is that you're trying to preserve as much of the original song as possible. You don't want anything to get cut out if you can help it. Now, one thing that might have to hit the cutting room floor for the sake of this segue is the very, very tail end of Wicked Game. Because after the last chorus and this sort of guitar riff, and just the repeated tag, with you, with you, there's this little ending where the tempo stops, so it's basically just held chords. Nobody loves no one. Now, this is where you have to make an executive decision. You can keep that and just start Fields of Gold right at the end of that, and that works. So, nobody loves no one. Fields of Gold just starts with a held B minor chord. In fact, I think it's a B minor 11. You'll remember me when the west wind moves upon the fields of barley. We'll forget the sun, etc. So, you can do it that way, and that works. But there isn't really much holding the two songs together so much as they're similar songs being played back to back. That's how it kind of feels with that one to me. So I don't like to actually do that. And much as it goes against my principles of, you don't want to take anything out of the song to make the segue, in this case, I think you kind of do. Because the two songs, again, if you're playing them to do the segue, you can do them at the exact same tempo. I'm not sure if they're the exact same beats permitted on the records, but it really doesn't matter. And both these songs have very soft drums, guitars. It's all very understated. So you come out of the last chorus of Wicked Game. No, I don't wanna fall in love. No, I don't wanna fall in love with you. With you. Once you're ready to make the change, you just do that same vocal tag again. With you. And then you can just hold on the B minor while keeping the groove going. If you have a band, that same spot would be where the band would switch the groove, the drum groove or the guitar groove or the bass groove just slightly on that very last with you. Like that would be the cue to start playing the new groove. But because it's all so quiet and understated, the shift won't seem that jarring to the audience. So you just hold on this chord for a minute. People wondering, what are you doing? You'll remember me when the west wind moves among the fields of barley. You'll forget the sun in his jealous sky as we walk in fields of gold. Now, if you wanted to do this the other way, you could. And I think the best way to do that, I think it'll work best if you have a guitar player. If you don't, you're going to have to rely on the guitar part on that piano and that intro. I can do it if I'm not playing any other notes because I have this pitch wheel here. You're going to want to rely on that riff to get out of Fields of Gold into Wicked Game. So, apart from the first verse of Fields of Gold, which ends on B flat, or on B minor, excuse me. Oh God, B flat would sound horrible in this. As we walked in fields of gold. And then there's this sort of bagpipe sound. All the rest goes straight to the D instead of the B minor. So it'd be when we walk in fields of gold, which is more of a resolution. And so that's also how the song ends. When we walked in fields of gold. It just has a tag. When we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. Now, if you want to go to Wicked Game, you want to keep the groove and hold that that last D. So when we walk in fields of gold. 3, 4, down. And to my mind, that honestly works just as well. Like, I think the segue works, like the actual physics, if you will, of the segue work just as strongly both ways because of, again, these songs are both sort of muted, moody, in the same key, similar groove. Either way works. I think, again, I like to do Wicked Game first because I like Fields of Gold, and it's just gloriously melancholy lyrics to be the lasting impression of this. And the funny thing is, we had because we've been quarantining, as a family here, just about everyone in this family plays music. Some of us, not all of us pursue it professionally, but we all play music to some degree, and what you can't see in the barn is there's another piano, like the piano from the house I grew up in, is against the wall over there, but it's terribly out of tune, which is why I'm not using it. There's a drum kit, there's a cajon, there were guitars, congas. So we had a family jam session out here for my dad's 60th birthday recently, and we were just thinking, okay, well, like, what are simple sort of loopy songs, or songs with loops, not loopy as in crazy, but songs that are, simple looped chords or whatever that we can do. And so we ended up doing Wicked Game, and I think my brother Graham was on drums, and he was just doing a da da da. And I said, Graham, just keep that groove going. Because I came up with the segue a while ago, but this was the first time I kind of showed it to anybody. I just said, just keep that going. So I did the same thing I did here, which is holding the B chord. You'll remember me when the west wind moves. And as soon as I did that, all around the room, just like the recognition on people's faces, and my mother in particular, she, did this kind of thing that she's just like, that's so cool. Which obviously, on an ego front, the validation is great, but also just because I've talked about it before, it was that moment of epiphany that I talk about with these segues. It's the reason I do segues, is because that moment when you share that with an audience, when they figure out what it is you're doing, and like all of a sudden they're in on the secret. And that moment of connection is one of the greatest feelings that I've had, either as a performer or an audience member. Because obviously, I started doing segues because I saw bands like the Bruce Hornsby do it, and now when I see any other artist do it, it's that same connection. And speaking for myself, I absolutely love it. So, if you decide to take anything away from this podcast, and please do, all of this is here for your inspiration. Take whatever you like. But I urge you to pay attention for that moment that you connect with your audience when they realize what the trick was. Because that's the point of all this, is that connection. And to me, it's worth it every time. So hopefully you've enjoyed, hopefully you've learned something, and I'll see you again soon.